Redemption is a very multifaceted concept in Judaism, and as we approach Chag HaPesach, we can turn to the Arba Lashonot of Geula, the 4 terms of redemption mentioned in Sefer Shemot, V'hotzeti, V'yitzalti, V'ga'alti, V'lakachti, to understand something about the notion of redemption. Now, the most conventional way of looking at these words is the one that we find in the Haggadah, and that's the approach that emphasizes God's role in the redemptive process. The Arba Lashonot primarily represent actions that God does for the Jewish people. And the Haggadah brings this message home. Ani v'lo malach, ani v'lo saraf. God is the great implementer of these 4 redemptive actions. But then there's the unconventional parish of the Meshech Chachma, Rav Meir Simcha of Dvinsk, a rabbi and leader in the early 20th century. And the Meshech Chachma gives a real twist to the whole notion of redemption as reflected in the Arba Lashonot. But he does it in a very elegant and subtle way, so you don't really see it until you think about it a little bit more deeply. What he does is simply define the 4 terms of redemption and explain why, in accordance with his understanding of each of them, we drink the cups of wine associated with them at specific intervals throughout the Seder. But as he defines each action, his focus shifts away from the conventional notion that God is the primary performer of these actions. And this is what he says. V'hotzeti is from the word hotza'ah, which connotes extraction. Ki'ubra bitoch isha, like a fetus being extracted from the womb. In Egypt, the extraction of the Israelites from an Egyptian environment took place. But the act of extraction, he says, can only occur when the entity being acted upon remains extractable. So the fact that hotza'ah took place has to indicate that the Israelites, even though they were so enmeshed in Egyptian culture, like a fetus enmeshed in a womb, must have done something to maintain their extractability, their separateness, their kedusha. And that's why we drink the cup of hotzeti at Kiddush when we say the blessing Mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmanim. V'hitzalti is like Hatzalah, like the ambulatory service. What kind of saving do they do? Physical saving from an external threat. That's what Hitzalti means. The Israelites were saved physically from the external threat of annihilation at the hands of Egypt, in an act which he explains is only meaningful if there's no additional threat from within. Saving the Jewish people from Egypt would not have been defined or definable as Hatzalah if the Jews had been fighting with each other, like cutting each other down for a crust of bread in order to survive. So the Lashon of Hatzalah indicates that the Israelites didn't inform or, God forbid, harm each other, but were satisfied with whatever bread they were given and didn't fight. And that's why he says we drink the cup of V'hitzalti at Birkat HaMazon when we say V'achalta v'savata, that we're satisfied with our meal. You see where we're going with this? V'ga'alti, he says, refers to a liberation, which is an action which is only possible for liberatable people. The Israelites could only have been set free if they had not succumbed mentally to a slave mentality, which doesn't recognize or aspire to freedom. He says that by keeping their family consciousness, sticking to their Masorah, their minds were already free enough that they were poised for Geula. So we drink the cup of V'ga'alti at the first part of Hallel when we talk about pride in our heritage and in our past. V'lakachti, the Israelites were taken as a nation, an action which is only possible because the Israelites remained takeable. They maintained their national identity and their aspirations for a nationalistic destiny, so they were ripe to be taken as a nation. Hence, the drinking of the V'lakachti cup at the second part of Hallel when we sing about our national aspirations. What's important to recognize is that the Meshech Chachma here is making a major shift in focus from emphasizing God's role in the redemptive process to focusing on human agency, connecting redemption to the Jewish people's preservation of their own kedusha, identity, values, heritage, nationalism. Ultimately, it was Bnei Israel's forging of their own unique identity within Egypt that made them redeemable, that made the redemption possible. There's a hint in this to what religious Zionists call Atchalta de Geula, the beginning of the redemption. Just as Bnei Israel forged their own identity, they made themselves redeemable, we must maintain our spiritual and mental and nationalistic freedom in the diaspora in order to logistically speaking, be redeemable, be able to experience redemption and freedom when the time comes. May our efforts this Pesach and beyond bring us to the fulfillment of the full Geula, the B'mehira B'yameinu.